Thank you very much. Thank you, St. Joseph constituency, my St. Joseph family. I thank you so much. It's most appropriate to play Ganges Meet Denial because this is what we represent in the St. Joseph constituency. We are unified, racially, religiously united constituency. I thank you. Having been born and lived eight polling divisions in St. Joseph for the past 55 years, I speak, yes, from time to time you will hear me speak very passionately because this constituency is as instinctive to me as breathing. Our problems, I am asked to speak about the St. Joseph constituency tonight, and I'm most comfortable doing that, except I'm also asked to look at what are the problems in the wider society, what are the causes of these problems, and what does the COP propose to do to solve these problems. And I will go a step further and show you what we did in St. Joseph to address all of the problems in the wider society. Now, our problems go back as far as colonialism. You see, for colonialism to have worked, very specific structures had to be in place. They had to bring about an oppressive system where the majority of the people do not challenge the systems. Another thing that had to literally happen for colonialism to work is that they had to make sure that education and the economic situation were not areas that will create challenges for people, the majority of people. So technically, we were existing in a very economically oppressive system under colonialism. Well, in our assessment, the COP did a massive assessment in 2008, and we identified some of the most critical problems that exist today. We identified crime, unemployment, the usual poverty, and of course, racial strife. But when we looked a little further, we realized something interesting, that the racial strife was deeply endemic and rooted in the politics, and that was what seemed to be driving it. And we discovered something else in our assessment, and out of the assessment came Assessment and Culture, one of my books that co-authored with other colleagues, and what we discovered is that the single-party system that we had led to many problems that we face today. Many people will remember and say, why is it the Southlands was so neglected under the previous administration? It's because of that single-party system. So as we began to do our research further in 2008, we realized that the coalition, after doing extensive research, that the coalition is something that must be considered. And I'm proud today to say, from the inception of the idea of coalition politics here in Trinidad and Tobago, I have never waned. This is the right form of governance for our country. And the reason why it is right is because under coalition, there will hardly be the issue of the divisiveness that exists in single-party governance when they neglect the opposing constituencies, as we saw in the Southlands for so many years under the previous administration. And let me give you some hope. In 2013, when I was asked to help develop the coalition in St. Kitts Nevis, we took our time because I learned from the teething problems we had here in Trinidad and Tobago. And today the coalition is such a seamless transition. It is powerful. It is working. We are working in Guyana to make it continue to happen well, and we are going to make sure it continues here. With coalition came the concept of proportional representation. And the PNM would like us to believe that proportional representation is the worst thing in the world. Our own leader put forward, as part of constitution reform, the concept of proportional representation. And what did they say? It's no good. Well, guess what? Proportional representation is as simple as this. If the farmers get together and form an association, and they get 10% of the vote, they're entitled to 10% of the seats. Now, do you see how easily this is to eradicate problems if we were to have such a system when there will be several different coalition partners basically running the parliament who are forced to work together, who are forced to get along, and so on. So now, Now, we discovered other problems like what we call corruption, usually found at the top of the society. And then we decided, okay, lots of physical infrastructural problems. So what I first made reference to were the social infrastructural problems. So what did the COP do? And the beautiful part of the COP, I must tell you, when in 2007 we remember so fondly coming into a party where we didn't have to think about race, where we didn't have to think about class. We literally transcended those kinds of physical attributes, and we united, and that's the spirit and the essence and the power of this coalition, but more importantly, of our COP party. And I have to say, when we saw the problems of crime and unemployment and poverty, those social problems, you know what we did in St. Joseph? We got them together. We identified the gang-related groups and some of those who were engaging in criminal activity, and we did an assessment. This is the COP I'm speaking about. And we did an assessment, and we were able to identify their strengths, and we realized a lot of those, what people like to term blue-collar crime. Well, I don't like to put colors in crime, but that's the international term used. A lot of it was stemming from something as simple as people unable to live with those low $9 a wage that we had before 2010. Of course, now we have $15 an hour minimum wage. But the point is, we got them together, did an assessment, and saw their strengths, and were able to literally, this is no exaggeration, 27 gang-related groups, we were able to get rid of them through the social interventions, which included assisting them in identifying their strengths and in helping them to get small business contracts like landscaping. But what was interesting too, we recognized the concept in the COP of intellectual equity. So we see the genius in the artists and the genius in the musicians and the sportsmen, and we helped them get contracts in areas that they were powerful in. And this is the beauty of how we were able today. 26 never went back to that life. This is now almost 9 years later. They have big employment. So this business about you cannot get rid of problems like crime, yes you can, but your policy must be both social and military, and the COP made that very clear in its policies in 2007. This party is rich in policies, but also rich in the development and the implementation of them as well. We also then looked at the issue of the corruption, and one would say, okay, just about every party that we had to deal with corruption. But I want you to understand something and see the special nature of this, how this partnership handled this situation of corruption from the top. If you have a young child who is caught stealing a cookie, and you turn around and you do nothing, what do you think is going to happen with the child? The child is going to continue stealing cookies. But if you say now, you know what, instead of punishing the child, I'm going to give the child 2 cookies more. What do you think the child going to do? Steal more cookies, because the more cookies I steal, it seems as if this parent giving me more cookies again. Well, guess what? It's the same thing with social corruption. This is why this concept that is very prevalent in religious institutions, the Latin term, elevator et removator. What that means in Latin is elevate in order to remove. This is what the previous administration historically did when they discovered corruption. They basically rewarded people for engaging in corruption. Do you understand this? Promoting people in higher positions and sending them off to be ambassadors, as Mr. Manning did more recently when Camille Robinson-Regis got herself in whatever credit card business. She was promoted to be an ambassador in Canada. You cannot deal with social problems by rewarding it. You have to stop it. And had, all due respect, we love our founding father, Dr. Williams, but had Dr. Williams stopped the corruption when Jean Miles brought it forward some 40 years ago, we would not, because with each continuing administration, the corruption gets worse. And herein lies why Kamala Prasad-Busesa, if nothing else she has done in her term here, is to put an end to this corruption by getting rid of every one of them. This, my corruption. And she did that. Now, the issue of race. Well, what did we do with that? Right here in St. Joseph, we're not going to deny the larger society affects us. And when we saw it, we had racially healing sessions, 2 racially healing sessions. Our COP leader commissioned current Minister of Multiculturalism to bring it at a national level, introducing racially healing sessions and discussions throughout the country. You see how COP acts and implements? This is what we're talking about. So now, the physical infrastructure, that is not as much the issue. It's happening. But what is good for you to understand, while both administrations may have focused on physical infrastructure, be it roads and so on, for quite a while, many years, up in 2009 when I was in the Senate, 70% of people did not have water every day. Now, this is a sad thing in our society. That's as basic as you can get. But what it is we did in terms of infrastructural is that we don't necessarily believe in building Hyatts and all of that. In the COP, for us, social upliftment, physical, it's a question of us recognizing that we have to include the needs of those at the bottom. So now we are faced with a decision here today. We are talking about, should we have party politics election coming up here in this year? Should we be talking about who did more crimes and who did more corruption? Or should we look at who can solve the problems in our country? The COP and the partnership, they have demonstrated, I give you just a glimpse of it here in St. Joseph, that we can solve the problems of the country. And you hear the Prime Minister talking at length about the fact that she's going to be focusing on social infrastructural. So my friends, it's coming down to this in this election. What do you want to see your country? You want to see your country addressing the needs of those at the bottom, as the COP and the partnership have already begun to do? Or you want to continue with whatever we have had in the past? You want a country of coalition where there is unity? Yes, we are still working things out. Do you want that, or do you want to go back to that single-party system that is divisive? I say, and we know clearly, that's the only way to go. And as I close here tonight, I want to take this opportunity to thank my St. Joseph family. You have always been part of my heart throughout all of my research in the last 25 years. And every opportunity I get, I thank my parents. My mom just passed 6 weeks ago. I thank my parents for nurturing a commitment to serving those at the bottom. And finally, to my husband and my daughter, Monique, who have always given me reason to be, as I say. Thank you, darling, for that. Thank you all.